Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This little light right here is the Peak Lights Eiger, E-I-G-E-R. First off, though, I want to thank my buddy Fernando. This is kind of a weird situation, though. He sent a light very similar to this one along. It was the neutral light bulb on it instead of the high CRI, but it was doing some weird things. So he sent it to me, and I was going to review it, but then I noticed it was doing some weird things. It was like flickering and whatnot as you were turning it and doing all kinds of strangeness. And so I thought, okay, maybe there's an issue here. I better pick one of these guys up because I don't want to ever portray somebody in a negative light just because, you know, something's used and has problems. But anyways, so he inspired me to do this review and to pick this little guy up. So thank you very much there, Fernando, for this and for giving me that point of comparison. Anyways, size comparison first off here. First off, of course, it's my channel, so here's the Spyderco Delica. So you can see here it's about the same in tube length. It's the Delica here. Something means more to flashlight people and regular people is right here. This is a AAA battery, which is, by the way, what's inside this light here. So you can see this is substantially larger than the battery up inside it. Here's a AA battery. This is an 18650. And a CR123 battery. And then this is my favorite light for everyday carry. This is the ETAC D25A. This is taking a AA battery rather than a AAA battery. So there you go. Like I said, though, this is a AAA flashlight. You can also use I think it's 10550 cell in it, but it's meant to take a AAA sort of battery, and so that's something to keep in mind. And this guy has a couple of extra things on there. I went ahead and I bought the optional momentary on switch here in the back. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I also, because they have different tail caps and whatnot, this also has an aftermarket clip on it. This is by Prometheus Lights, the same people who make the Beta QR here, as well as a bunch of other stuff. The Prometheus Alpha pen that I love so much is by the same folks. But anyways, he makes this great clip for this guy. This costs $20 in addition to the light here, but it's something you should really consider if you're considering this light. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly, this particular flashlight. First off, on the good side, this is actually able to use multiple battery types. Like I said, it's a AAA battery light, so I mean, fundamentally, it'll use any AAA. But you can also use a 10440 light, which is a small, I might have said 10550 earlier, whatever. It's 10440 battery. Maybe it's not. What do I know at this point? But you can also use rechargeable AAAs, which is nice and gets you a little bit of a boost sometimes, and they're rechargeable, which is a beautiful thing. But I love the fact that it's using an off-the-shelf battery type. AAA batteries are really easy to find, both around your house and at a convenience store, something like that. You can walk into a gas station, usually in the U.S., and find the AAA battery, whereas if you're needing a CR123 or an 18650, you're kind of up a creek. So this gives you a lot more flexibility, and I appreciate that very much. Next thing, this does have a feature where it allows you to basically dial in your brightness. So I'll see if I can show you this by kind of aiming in this direction. And so it's a twisty light fundamentally, but as you twist, you'll see that it'll start to come on eventually here. There we go. So it comes on very, very dim, and then it'll start to brighten up as I twist more and more. And each time I twist, it's getting a little brighter, until it eventually reaches its full brightness at its full tightness. At this point, you can also then start backing down a little bit and, you know, get it back to a less bright state. That is kind of nice because very often these small lights are have interfaces that are more like, you know, this is a three-way, you know, high, medium, low. But this gives you a little bit more continuousness to it. So that's kind of a nice thing, and I like the idea very much of giving you that. Next thing, using the neutral white bulb, this is a nice bright light. I mean, it is plenty bright as you're walking around there. Which is good. Using the high CRI bulb, that's a slightly different story. But, you know, it is absolutely good in that way. And then finally, on the good side, this is very nicely built. This feels like a quality metal object. I mean, the knurling on this is very nice. There were a lot of really nice elements to this. This feels like a nice solid tool. I could beat on this, I could throw this. It works well. And they offer different head shapes and everything like that. I guess another good thing, too, is all the various head shapes they offer that give you a more spotty beam versus the more floody, which is generally what I go for. But anyways, this is just a nicely built little light. It is a good object. And so that's something I appreciate. Oh, wait, the head thing's the great. Sorry. But anyways, I appreciate the build quality on this. This feels like a very nice light, and that's something I appreciate very much. So anyways, that's the good, is that it's very nicely built. It is, when you're using the neutral white bulb, plenty bright. You can absolutely use this guy outdoors, less so the high CRI. You do have that continuous brightness adjustment, which is very, very nice at some level, and it does use an off-the-shelf battery size, which is something I always appreciate. To me, what's great about this guy is the configurability that I was just gesturing at before forgetting that that's actually the great on my little notes over there. What I mean by that is that you can get multiple body types. So one of the bodies, for instance, is keychain only, and so you have it's a little bit of a shorter light as a result of that. You can't do the instant on thing, so I didn't go that route. You can also get multiple optics on there. I went for the very floody version because in my life, generally a floody light is what I'm after. I'm crawling around under a desk trying to unplug or plug some cable or another, versus, I'm outside trying to find, something in the great outdoors. So there you could get a very spotty, throwy light, but, for me, I wanted the floody. You can also get multiple emitter colors. You can get a cool white, you can get a neutral white, you can get high CRI. You can buy this clip, you can buy the instant on. This is a light that you can really customize in a lot of ways to your specific needs, more so than most of your smaller, single AAA sorts of affairs. So I appreciate very much that you've got that kind of customization option. It's not super common, at least on the smaller light front, and that's something that's great to me, absolutely. Let's talk about what's bad here. Okay, so on the bad side, first off, this is a little bit on the large side for a single AAA light. I mean, seriously, this is the battery and this is the light. Some of the other versions are a little bit smaller. You can get it a little smaller with the keychain mount without the continuously this is the easy on sort of thing. You can do a little better with it in that way, but the thing is, this is absolutely huge, and it's also a little bit on the heavier side. You're looking at 2.1 ounces, basically, for this little, relatively small light. I mean, in comparing that to a normal AAA, there's a fair amount of extra beef here. So that's something to keep in mind. Next thing, the high CRI version of this light is actually honestly not that bright. There is usually a trade-off in terms of color correctness versus brightness, but this really felt like a huge step down. Handling my buddy Fernando's in the neutral white relative to this guy in the high CRI, and high CRI, by the way, means high color rendering index, so it just represents colors more truly as you're doing that. But this really did drop down a fair amount, and it makes this guy, in its current configuration, more of a, you're in a very dark room and you're navigating your way through, or you're looking behind the computer. Mind you, if you're trying to plug in colored cables, higher CRI can be nice, and there were definitely uses for it, but this becomes a light that is a little bit more limited by its output. It's not all that high in terms of output. And so, it'll work, it's okay, but it doesn't impress me, and especially compared to a lot of other lights in the same category, this is way, way, way dimmer. So that's something I'm not a huge fan of. And then next thing is that this guy is very expensive. Compared to every other AAA light, this is kind of way up there. I mean, the base model for this guy is $62, which is okay. But the thing is, once you buy the clip, and you probably are going to want the clip, which is about $20 and available not from Peak, but by somebody else, and then you put the momentary on switch in there, which you actually might be able to afford skipping, you're looking at $100+ for a little AAA light here. I mean, it's robust, it's a well-built light, but that's a lot of freaking money. And especially compared to other competition like the Prometheus guy, same clip, because same people, it just, the price equation doesn't work out for me here. And so to me, at least, that's kind of what's bad about this guy, is that it's very expensive. The high CRI version is just honestly not that bright. It's not impressing me in terms of output particularly, and it's a little bit heavy, and it's a little bit large for a single AAA light. On the ugly front, for me there are two issues. First off, the momentary on switch. So this is a plunger, and it's spring-loaded. The thing is, it's not the case that when you start to press down on it, it starts coming on. No, you really need to push pretty hard on this guy. In order to get any light output that's meaningful, and especially to get the peak output, you are really jamming your finger in there. It doesn't stay on. It only holds as long, and that's, momentary on. But the problem is that as you're doing this, not only do you need a lot of pressure to trigger, but it's a little bit hard to hold in that position. I mean, even if you're just like looking around behind the computer, I find myself wanting to get out the other hand and actually just do the twist to get the full brightness, because you want this guy on full brightness because it ain't all that bright. And it's just not comfortable for anything more than a flicker. And the other thing is, speaking of flickers, this guy is very, very sensitive, not only to the pressure of your finger, but the thing is, even if I just, there's no way for me to rig this up, but even if I'm applying a relatively constant amount of pressure to this guy, you can see this light flickering back and forth here. That's something we'll talk about in a second there, but it's not something I'm super in love with. This just leaves a light that is basically, you're going to want to use it twisty 99% of the time, and so honestly, I'm not sure I recommend the Momentary on. It's a nice feature, and it's good to be able to very quickly get a lot of light on something, but most of the time I found myself doing the twist anyways, and so why would I pay the additional money if I'm just going to end up twisting? So there you go. The other ugly thing, and probably the ugliest thing here, is that brightness adjustment thing that I mentioned. This has that continuous brightness adjustment thing. It's not like a brightness adjustment in the sense of a magnetic ring. There are lights like this guy that have a truly pretty linear brightness adjustment. As you turn this more, very fine-grainedly and very consistently, it will get brighter, and then it will get less bright. This guy, however, has this really weird kind of response curve, where as you're turning it, it'll get brighter, and then it might dim down a little bit, and then it'll get a little brighter. It's very flickery. It's very easy to be in a state where you're just, not quite sure what the brightness is going to be. It's not linear. It's not, and so it has a tendency also, by the way, to come on to a low level when you set the guy down. If you just bring it down to okay, it's off, then you set it down again. I've often come back to find this guy in a very, very low running state. It's nice that you can get a very low running state on this, and especially if in the dark, if you're a mole person, this might be enough. Oh, wait, went off. See? It might not be enough light for you, and, that's nice compared to something with a distinct low, but I just don't love this, and it's not super satisfying to use. I feel like I'm really having to crank on it to get light, and even as I'm cranking it, as I'm trying to find the right light setting, it's jumping around on me, it's flickering, it's just not a great experience. And so, I hope that this guy would be like, oh, cool, it's a continuously adjustable light. Yeah, it is, but it's going to fight you every step of the way, and so to me, at least, that's kind of what's ugly about this guy, is that the brightness adjustment thing, although it does work, and it's nice that you get that really low level, it's really fiddly and flickery and not that pleasant, and the Momentary on thing is very touchy, needs a lot of pressure, it gets pretty flickery pretty quickly, and in the end you're going to end up twisting it, so it's probably not worth that extra money I spent there. So you live, you learn. Final conclusion on this guy, honestly, this is not a light that I love. I mean, the continuous adjustment feature is kind of its big shtick, but I don't love it. Compared to an actual rotary light where it's using, this just feels hacky. I mean, yeah, it works, and yeah, it's very simple, and yeah, but I don't know, I'm not doing it. And the Momentary on thing is not all that great either, and it's a little bit big and a little bit heavy for the performance that you're getting, and honestly, in the high CRI version, it's not all that much of a performer. This is not a super bright light. And then the price on top of all that is way up there, and particularly when you add in the clip that you're going to have to buy from somebody else, I'm just not loving it. And so considering that you can get other lights that are just as, good, if not way better, for the same price, something like the TAC D25A, which given does not have the continuous variation, but it does have multiple modes, and all of those modes get way brighter than this guy does. Says a better low, though. Or, for instance, the Prometheus QR, this Beta QR, just absolutely lights this guy, the Eiger that is, under the table. This throws out way more light than this could dream of. I don't see it. I mean, it's a nice light. It's very robust. There is some joy here. But at that price, with that flickeriness to it, although you're more than welcome to take a peek, I'm just not seeing the Eiger in the long term. So, there you go. I hope this has been interesting to you, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of the day. This review brightened up your life a little bit, in a smooth, linear way. Bye now.